Hi, everyone. Reverend Beth Simmons here with a midweek moment for you. Our second Wednesday in Lent. First Wednesday was last week. No midweek moment because it was Ash Wednesday. And so I was offering ashes and love blessings to folks at the meeting house here in Hancock. We did ashes to go in 2 sessions, and it was very blustery and cold, but a lovely chance to connect with folks. Our theme for Lent this year is Sabbath. We're connecting with Wendell Berry poetry in that, but really just focusing on the practices of Sabbath and the best practices of Sabbath. And one of the things I've been thinking about is the story that I have often told myself, and I bet some of you may also tell yourself. And that is the story that we don't have time for Sabbath. I think this is a particularly American story, not exclusively, but I think it connects, for instance, to the Americans' propensity to not take our vacation time. We think we don't have time for it. We don't want to deal with the hassles that come on either end of vacation. So the extra work of preparing for vacation and the extra work that waits us when we get back. We check our email while on vacation. We, especially, I think this happened before COVID, but maybe was exasperated by the remote work that increased during COVID, which is that we have a hard time putting our work away at nighttime. We and this goes both ways, right? Sometimes our jobs have the expectation that we will be checking email at all hours of the day, but sometimes we also don't set those boundaries ourselves, and we have notifications dinging on our phone, and so we check our email, or we're we are still staying up late trying to finish up some work things or what have you. And so we feel like taking an entire day off, or even a half a day or an hour every day set away and set apart is not possible. We are busy. That's another particular American thing, I think, is our busyness, and busyness as a status symbol in many ways. People ask how you're doing. Oh, I'm so busy. And for some of us, that is absolutely the reality. For me personally, I know when I tell people sort of the things that are going on in my life, they look at me like, when do you sleep? And I realize as I'm saying it that it sounds overwhelming, and it sometimes is. But I remember telling myself this story in seminary. Now, here I am. I'm a young grad student. I was working multiple jobs to try and pay for school, or just, pay for food and everything else. And plus studying and working in multiple settings. So, I had my job, and then I had field work 1 year. But I remember one Lent in particular, I decided to try Sabbath back then. And what I discovered was that, well, main two things. One was that I had to have a mindset that that day was not available. It just, as if it didn't exist, for homework or checking email or whatever, going grocery shopping. As if that just disappeared off my calendar, off my schedule, off the opportunity to do things during that day. Was not available. Which then led to that second revelation of that you need to prepare for Sabbath. Sabbath is not just the thing you wake up and do. You have to plan ahead. So for instance, if cooking is work to you, if it's not something joyful and that you enjoy and that is a special treat for you, and you would like Sabbath to be a time set apart from that task, then you have to have food prepared. So either you keep your leftovers all week and Sabbath is just the day that you eat whatever's in the fridge, or you order ahead, or if you're, you live where we are, you got to plan that because there's not a lot of takeout things and they are not always open. Uh, or if, cooking is something that you love to do, then you have to have your ingredients. So if, you pick Sunday, you say Sunday's going to be my Sabbath. Well, that's the day you usually do laundry. Okay, well, suddenly Sundays are not available to do laundry. When are you going to do your laundry? Now, for some people, you're going to have the same sort of reaction that we do with vacation, in that the extra time and effort needed ahead of time is not going to feel worth it, perhaps. You don't want to have to do your laundry on a Wednesday night when you're already exhausted. But I'm just going to go ahead and nudge and say that I think it actually is worth it. I managed for 6 weeks more. I'm pretty sure my Sabbath practice lasted at least a little bit beyond Easter that year. And I managed to get my schoolwork done. And I managed to do my jobs, my various jobs, some of which were done on the computer remotely. So it's not even like I just didn't go to the office. And I still managed to keep Sabbath. When it becomes a choice that you make on the day of, it's already lost. When you, and I say this for going to church too, if you wake up on a Sunday morning and you have to think, do I want to go to church today? You're not going to go. Very rarely. But if that is just your practice, just what you do, and maybe once in a while you wake up and you're like, I really am not up to it, then that can be your choice. But when the expectation is set that it's there. So if your expectation is already that you practice Sabbath and that this time that you have chosen is set aside, set apart, and is not available for other things, you have to work around it. You do. You work around it. And I think this was the whole intention of Sabbath at the beginning, was to say, you don't need 7 days to do the work. And I think this is somewhat what we're seeing too with this sort of push. And some say it's a generational thing, that millennials and Gen Z are sort of going through this. I don't see it necessarily as a strict generational, because certainly, I'm a Gen Xer. We're looking at this too, as are older folks that I know, those at least who are still working. But sort of this work-life balance, and people are experimenting with shrinking the work week even further from 5 days to 4 days, because what they're finding, especially in families and situations where all the people in the household are working, or at least all the adults are working, so you don't have one person responsible for sort of the out of the house, outer realm things, the work and the earning money, whilst one person stays home and takes care of the inner space and the family, is that the weekends get dedicated then. So your weekdays, your work days are dedicated to work, and your weekends are dedicated to home, and you don't get a break. And so there is this push to say, what if we just gave an extra day that then you actually have a chance to rest? So you get your work done in 4 days, and maybe they're 4 slightly longer days, but often they're just 4 days of regular length, and you have 3 days off so that you can mow your lawn and do your laundry and, go to soccer games and do whatever. And also, you can sit in a hammock and you can read a book and you can have dinner with your friends. And it is not this constant hamster wheel. We just keep going. We can't go. We can't get off. We got to go. We got to go. One thing is, there's something always to be done. It is possible. And I am saying this even as someone who's basically working multiple full-time jobs and a part-time job and caring for all the people. Do I always do it perfectly? No. Sometimes I just decide to do a task on a Sabbath day because that's what I am motivated to do and I really want to move ahead. Yeah, I do. Because that's the season I'm in at the moment. But I also try to give myself the permission to not do those things, to remember that those things will still be there, and to also remember that in 6 months, 5 years, 10 years, I will probably not remember that I finished those tasks one day faster because I didn't rest. But I will remember being exhausted or burnt out. Or I will find that at the end of those 5 years, I missed things, missed time with my family, that I probably would be happy to give a few days back if I had the opportunity. So, anyway. So, what I wanted to just encourage you to do this week is to set aside time, whether you call it Sabbath or you call it a day off or whatever, however you phrase it. Set aside some time. Make it a non-negotiable. Just set your mind to say, this is not available time to me to do the to-do list, to check emails or whatever. Not available. Those don't happen on this day. And then to prepare for that. Work a little harder or a little longer on the days you're not Sabbath. Throw in the load of laundry on a Thursday, switch it over on a Friday, whatever, so that you don't have to do it on Saturday or Sunday or whatever your day is. Prep some food ahead of time. Make sure you have leftovers. Whatever you need to do to prepare to be able to fully experience that Sabbath rest and time apart. You got 5 weeks left till Easter. So try it for that 5 weeks. If you need a little longer to sort of get it figured out, maybe continue your practice, to commit to continuing your practice during the following 50 days of Easter. So it's 40 days of Lent, 50 days of Easter. So 90 days. 90 days is absolutely enough to create a new habit. So give it a shot. But prepare for your Sabbath. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week as we head into this end of February already. The sun is shining warmly, even though the temperatures are still chilly. Yeah, and if you would like to join us for worship, 9:45 on Sunday morning at the Meeting House in Hancock, New Hampshire, or the sermon will be posted later on YouTube. All right, friends, be well and take Sabbath.